Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022, and this is a special 123rd episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. My honored guest today is Kathleen Murray, the Republican nominee for the Illinois Senate in the 21st District. Kathleen Murray is a 20-year tech industrial executive currently serving as a chief creative officer for Titanium Technologies. She has, in the past, also been a board infrastructure experimental in manufacturing, marketing, import-export, trading, and also sourcing. After extensive international studies and also creative moves, Kathleen chose her hometown of Lombard, Illinois, to raise her children, as she has done so as a single mother. Kathleen does know the firsthand how difficult and hard it can be for a woman in the workforce, and also keeping the commitment really to raising healthy and well-rounded children. She is tackling government overreach into private lives by developing the Parental Bill of Rights, which she is going to champion in the state of Illinois Senate. The Freedom Alliance, Illinois Family Action, Illinois State Rifle Association, Manufacturing and Technology Association, the Safe Suburbs USA, and also Stand for Health Freedom have all endorsed Kathleen. Kathleen, it's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Kathleen, I do want to talk to you about your race specifically. I do know that the census have changed some of the maps and the districting. If you could tell us a bit of your district, we're going to put up the your district map and how it has changed, and tell us where we are currently with the race.
So Senate District 21 includes Lombard, Glen Ellen, eastern portion of Wheaton, Lisle, and Naperville. And it's currently looking pretty close. In 2018, the incumbent won by less than 1,200 votes out of 98,000. So it was close at that point. And obviously, a lot has changed in the last few years. And there certainly is a lot of hope that there's a red wave coming. And I think the last few years, like myself, I've been very frustrated. Many people have been frustrated with what's been happening to the state of our world, the state of Illinois. There's the Illinois is a mess. Crime is out of control. Cost of living, inflation. It's getting to the point where it's unaffordable to live in Illinois. And the issues with the Safety Act. Discussions about Amendment 1. The policies, rights of parents being, slipping away. So, for me personally, I never had political aspirations. I'm a very busy person, but I felt compelled to get involved because I've frankly had enough, and I don't want to continue complaining about our state and I had to do something about it. And I felt like I owed it to my children. I'm a lifelong resident of Illinois. I've lived in Lombard since I was 3 years old. And, I'm living in my childhood home and raising my children in the home that my father built. And so I want to stay in Illinois, but I'm finding it increasingly difficult to justify staying in Illinois. And so I felt like I owe it to my children to do what I can to try to, preserve our state. And otherwise, I don't want to have to escape it. I want to stay. I have deep roots in the community.
No, I know, especially in Illinois, once you're settled here, really you have deep roots. So unfortunately, you have individuals who are now leaving even their parents, some of their children behind, whether they're alive or even, somewhere in the local cemeteries behind, and leaving them to go to other states because of inflation. It's funny, you take a 15-inch step across this so-called imaginary line that we call the difference between Illinois and Indiana, and that 15-inch step, you could be standing in a state that is prosperous, doesn't have the issues that Illinois has. You take a step back, and everything's just a mess. I do know that you have been endorsed by many organizations, which is a positive step, foundation. I do want to talk a little bit about your background. I know that you work with Titanium Technologies. What does that company do, and how is that related, do you think, for what you can do here in Illinois to improve the possible business side of the house and maybe tackle inflation if possible?
So I want to give a little bit more about my background. I have a very diverse background, and I feel like I'm very uniquely qualified with my education, my experience in the corporate sector, my expertise in negotiations, balancing budgets, and international relations. I'm in addition to being a CCO, which is Chief Creative Officer for Titanium Technologies, I'm also a small business owner. So I'm very familiar with the challenges and costs of operating in Illinois. I own a restaurant as well as a food truck in addition to my corporate job. In my education, I have an MBA and a bachelor's in psychology. And in the late 90s, at the start of my career, I had a dual focus on business law and mental health. I had internships and later worked in a mental health facility. And I also was the director of research for Justice Publications under Judge Robert Hunter, who authored the trial handbooks for Illinois lawyers and the federal trial handbooks. And my time with the judge really provided me a very unique view of the law in action, as opposed to just reading, written words. Currently, I'm an executive in the technology industry the last 6 years for Titanium Technologies. And that company it's a wire and cable company that has been around since 1984 up in the Detroit area. And the company was founded and did a lot of work on an OEM basis with a lot of the car manufacturers there. When I came on board, I started a brand under a consumer electronics division called Velocilinks. And in that capacity, I developed a gaming company doing PC gaming headsets, keyboards, as well as portable power, like power banks, solar powered generators, etc. So prior to that, I spent 16 years as an executive in the plumbing industry and hardware sector. And I spent a lot of my time overseas in both Asia and Europe, specifically China. And so I have a very global perspective on the world. And, I've got a lot of expertise in balancing corporate budgets, which clearly our state needs some help in understanding how to be fiscally responsible and balancing budgets. I'm an expert in negotiations. That's one of my specialties, and at various levels of business. And that's clearly a skill which would allow me to work with others in government across the table, and in order to achieve policy goals, because you have to have bipartisan support in order to get anything accomplished in government. So I have a unique skill set with my background. I'm still involved in mental health related issues. And obviously mental health is, front constantly in headlines because of the mental health crisis that's facing our community with a lot of, the situations with school shooters, et cetera. So there needs to be more attention on mental health issues in our community. I founded the Healing Invisible Wounds campaign several years ago, which helps bring awareness and suicide prevention for veterans and first responders. And of course, first and foremost, I'm a mom, and I'm committed to the well-being of our children. It's really my children that are the reason why I've decided to run. I feel that I owe it to my children and to their future, and to make changes in the state. And, like I said, I had a lot of reasons why I wanted to someday get involved in politics, but it was really December 23rd of 2021, that Christmas shooting at Oak Brook Mall, that made that decision for me. I was at Oak Brook Mall shopping when I heard gunshots behind me, which my brain processes fireworks. And as I turned, I was 15 feet away from the shooter. And I turned to take cover, anticipating a bullet in my back. And in those few seconds, I was thinking, where is it going to hit me? Not if I was going to get hit. I was certain that I was going to get shot. And I wondered if I was going to die instantly or if I was going to bleed out, if it was going to hit me in my head or my body, what that was going to feel like. And that really was a catalyst, that I firsthand felt the failed policies of Chicago, of Cook County, and feeling it firsthand and being terrified. And, my children had begged that day to go with me to Oak Brook Mall, and I almost gave in. So I can't help but think many times over the course of the past year about what if my children were there. My son certainly would not be in Aldo's shoe store. He would be at the pretzel shop right next door and right in the heat of it. And I know for a fact, if my child was outside with that situation, I would have ran out no matter what to try to cover and protect my child. And, I think about the what ifs, and instead of, my way to deal with it was deciding to run. And that was really the catalyst. And like I said, there was so many things over the past few years that I've been unhappy with: the government overreach, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the school boards, they attending school board meetings, fighting on behalf of my children, and watching the school boards try to, take control and act as parents, as opposed to educators. And it was just enough. And so I decided it's time for me to run and make a difference and fight for our fight for parents, fight for our state.
No, look, you took an incident that happened in your life that, I've been in combat, so I understand getting shot at. That's not an issue for me. But I do know the effects it has on individuals who are not expecting it. You're not expecting that in a country that we live in, prosperous as it is, that you'll have Americans taking other Americans' lives for no reason. And it's not just that on that day you could have been killed. A talented mom like you, a talented American who has been able to reach out and touch many people's lives in various different companies and organizations. But at the same time, your kids, I know that if I'm not mistaken, your daughter's studying overseas in Italy currently. Is that correct?
Yes, she's in Italy and Rome. And yeah.
So, the background as far as what you were able to raise these two children, wonderful as a single mom, is a testament to itself. And then you took that calling and you channeled it towards running here in the state of Illinois. I know you're running against a Democratic machine. It does become difficult, but you decide to run in your hometown, Lombard, where you were born and you were as a young child. And I'm glad that you're able to hopefully be a voice for those individuals in the 21st district here in Illinois. Let me ask you a question on the issues that you brought up on the crime issue and the Safety Act. For those of our audience that may not know what is going to happen on January 1st, given the Safety Act, can you give them a little bit of a background as to what they might be expecting?
Yeah, well, the Safety Act, first of all, it was a 764-page document that was essentially passed in the middle of the night with very little consideration of and discussion. And on January 1st, probably the most important one that is getting the most attention is the elimination of the cash bail. And this is obviously extremely alarming. And the other fact that is concerning to me is it's going to be restricting the discretion of law enforcement and judges' discretion. And it's going to have instead of it being focused on the individual situation, it's going to have these sweeping general classifications that treat people as groups as opposed to individuals. And there's going to be, issues with the judges having to have the burden of proof and doing a proof up to, determine whether or not a person can be released. And so it's very alarming. And I cannot understand how any anyone could have voted for the Safety Act. And I'm very scared what's going to happen on January 1st.
No, same thing for us. Look, I think a lot of people may not know how Illinois works. In the Illinois legislature, you could pass a bill that doesn't have any of the language that you may have seen currently in the Safety Act. And then what happens is once you pass that bill specifically, you could gut the bill and replace the entire language of it, but keep the same number that was associated with the previous bill with the previous language. So that makes it, that gives you an opportunity not to have to push it through the legislative process. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that cashless bail brings equity, but it doesn't, because technically you could hold somebody now if you want to indefinitely. Imagine if a rich person, a poor person, has been said by others before, are convicted of the same crime. The judge can say at discretion, well, you know what, you're a rich person, you may have standing within your community, I'm going to go ahead and release you on your cognizance. But you have somebody who's doesn't have that, and the judge can hold them, and they could still stay in prison. And I think the people who think that it actually brings equity, it doesn't. It doesn't equal the playing field. It puts us in a position where if now somebody violates their parole because there's no cash bail and they don't have any incentive to have to come back, I should say, to the date that was given for their trial, then what happens is it goes into the paperwork as a warrant being issued for that person's arrest. But when you have the defunding of the police that takes place and the cutting of the budget of the police just don't have the manpower to go after these individuals to be able to arrest them. Hopefully, maybe if a crime is committed and they pop up with a warrant, that's the time when they get arrested. Unfortunately, by then it's too late anyway. So on the technical merits of it, it really hampers, as you were saying, a law enforcement's ability to even do anything as far as these individuals are concerned. And it puts the judges in a position where they have a difficulty to be able to do anything in order to be able to possibly use that money in order to force and possibly give an incentive for a criminal to come back to the courts without just skipping his court date. Tell us a bit
And
about
also,
the.
I was going to say one other thing too. It's hard to prove willful flight, which is, one of the, that's one of the burden of proof that's required. So unless someone has a flight, a ticket to go out of state, and they can prove it, it's hard to prove in advance that someone has that, intent to leave the state. And even if they do, for example, with electronic monitoring, there's a 48-hour window now where they can be in violation of they can be in violation of the electronic monitoring and be fleeing for 48 hours before law enforcement can do anything. There's also the, class B and C misdemeanors. From now, you're just going to be issued citations and, trespassing, for example. So in the case of trespassing, somebody's at your home and you want them to leave, you call the police will walk up, write a citation, and that's it. Now it's your problem. There's nothing more that can happen. There was another instance that is very concerning too, is there has to be a specific individual, a threat to a specific individual in order to detain someone, say, for example, for assault. So what happens if a husband murders, abuses, domestically batters and kills his wife? While in court, that if the wife is dead, is that considered a specific threat to an individual? Well, the individual is dead. So now what? Does that mean that the person is not a threat to the general public anymore because that person's dead? So it's very alarming that there are many, many issues with the Safety Act. And apart from the policy issues, it's unconstitutional. It violates several factors. And first and foremost, that single subject rule. I think it impacts 264 other other amendments that would have to be updated. Another requirement would be the three readings in 3 days. So it was passed without even being constitutional. It's not lawful. Any of the legislators who supported the bill and voted in favor of it, were acting unconstitutionally. So, policy aside, it's unconstitutional. But looking at the individual items in and of itself, it's terrifying what's going to happen to, January 1st. I'm very concerned because there's not much of a deterrent for criminals now, and the bar is being lowered. So if you're a criminal, you're not going to have. There's no deterrent to repeating your crime.
Well, look, the Attorney General of Illinois can go ahead and sue the governor, and in this case, if it is a violation, it's unconstitutional, should have. Unfortunately, he is also part of the machine politics, and you have individuals currently in Illinois saying that, well, we could maybe look at amendments, but as you laid it out, if the whole thing is unconstitutional, how are you going to look at fixes for each on a bill that is unconstitutional to begin with? It doesn't work that way. That's the reason, I know that you're also really pushed for trying to run this year in order to ensure that you could be at the legislator and the state of Illinois in order to be able to force the current majority, the Illinois Democratic machine, to have to understand that they need to oblige by their own constitution if they truly want to be able to be taken seriously. I do want to go ahead and focus on your Bill of Rights for parents, because I know all this leads specifically to it. Tell us a little bit about the Bill of Rights and what are some of the parameters of that Bill of Rights, and why did you decide to work on this specifically?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the last few years really opened my eyes to seeing firsthand that our rights as parents are slowly slipping away. And, parents are losing oversight, and that oversight is being taken up by the state. And, with my experience at the school board, for example, this really started that little fire inside of me back at that point. But parents, not the government, have and should have the sole authority and responsibility to raise their children according to their own values. And the appropriate time to talk about sex related topics and making decisions for the well-being of their children. And one of the most important points of this Bill of Rights that I'm proposing is really shifting the power away from government and back to parents where it belongs. And one of the first ways to do that is through school choice, and giving parents the right to choose to have their children's education. The education dollars go to the educational providers of their choice, whether that's public or private. And additionally, that also goes one step further to allowing parents to have the right to homeschool their children, and with equipment and supplies that are funded on an equal per capita basis, with children attending, schools outside of the home, whether public or private. So, for me, that issue became very top of mind when I went into the school boards and I witnessed what was happening at the schools. And when I was home, working side by side with my son on his video calls and seeing firsthand what poor education we have in our schools, and how the focus is no longer about education, and it's become about social issues and cultural issues and pushing agendas and indoctrinating. And there's no surprise that our proficiency in math and English and reading statewide is so poor. So giving parents the choice to educate your child with which is in alignment with your own values, and having that freedom to homeschool if you would prefer, and having those tax dollars be allocated to your choice is one of the key factors of the proposed bill. And the other top point that I wanted to make sure was covered in the Bill of Rights was the parental notification. And this is very, very important. And to me, this is a fundamental, no-brainer, common sense. You're a parent, you should be notified of anything pertaining to your minor child, but that's not the case anymore. And so parents have the right to be notified of any recommended medical or healthcare services, anything related to the mental or well-being of their child, as well as any safety issues that are occurring in the school or around the school. And any, for example, any investigations or crimes committed by teachers or employees of the school. And so, the other topic that I wanted to make sure I covered in the Bill of Rights was the curriculum and having the ability to opt out of, and if a parent doesn't feel that the material that's going to be covered properly reflects, their values. And so having the right to opt out and determine the education with regards to, for example, things of a sexual nature. And then I'm also considering rewording it so it's more of an opting in as opposed to opting out, because a lot of times parents are very busy and they're not reading all of the papers that come home from school and perhaps not signing off on, opting out of a, sex discussion in the school. So I think a better proposal would be to have to opt in if you want to have your child, be participating in these sort of discussions. So there's many other things like right to child privacy, right to access, right to be heard at school board meetings, right to review video footage or any, body camera footage or social media content that the school has in possession. So there's a lot of great points, but it's a shame that it's come to this, because to me, these are fundamental rights that have always existed. And the fact that we're at this point where we feel our rights slipping away, that they have to be protected, and asking the government to protect the rights of parents it's a sad day for Illinois. It's a sad time.
It's sad, but it's a reality. I mean, you got school boards and school system that believes that they have the right to parent your child, but you don't. And they don't invest as much as you invest in your own child. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I've had children sometimes, they ask me, not my kids, others, that, what is your advice? I say, talk to your dad and mom, because they're more of a vested interest in you being successful than maybe I would have, because they know you from the day you were born. So it makes no
Right.
sense when you have individuals who have their own issues that they deal with at home, making basically carte blanche decisions based on political factors and who may have given them money for them to be in the position that they are today by running a race that allows them to basically have a say over the parents. So no, I hope that others do sign up once you're in the Senate on this particular proposal and codify it, maybe even in our Constitution. Unfortunately, it is a reality we have to go through just to be able to get people to do what is the right thing.
Yeah.
Kathleen, I do want to kind of touch upon maybe on the inflation issue. I mean, you work for various different companies. Some of those companies, if I'm not mistaken, had unions in them, either
Yeah.
negotiating union or non-union. So, have any of the unions here in Illinois recognized you, or have they not? Or is it still too early for them to kind of come out in support of you possibly endorsing you for your race?
I have not yet been endorsed. I don't know if it's too early. I mean, we're days away. So I don't have any of the union support. I do have the technology and manufacturing association support, but unfortunately, I think some of my views perhaps may be alarming for the unions. Particularly, I've stated that I'm opposed to Amendment. I'm opposed to Amendment 1, and I feel like it's gives too much power. It's extreme power to union bosses, and they already have the right to negotiate, and that puts the unions above state law. So this is very alarming to me, and I think my position on Amendment 1 perhaps maybe has lost some support of the union side.
Well, I mean, Amendment 1 makes it very difficult. I think, they sell it as to that it gives rights to workers. Well, those rights are already cauterized in the federal law.
Right.
But what it does, it's now puts it in a constitutional manner where the reason you're passing this particular amendment is possibly because of the fact that the union bosses have given money to the individuals that are currently in the Illinois government, and they want more power. Unfortunately, it's not just that it will raise your taxes. Can you imagine today, the Chicago police can not go on strike. The fire department cannot go on strike. But tomorrow, if this bill, or I should say this amendment passes, then, what's stopping the Chicago police to say, okay, we're going to go on strike. That's it. We're sitting at home. You handle your own police business, or the fire department saying we're going to sit and go on strike. It will completely put us in a disadvantage to be able to get anything done with those, that is already allowed in the negotiating union process. But like I said, Illinois politician will do almost anything for money. Hopefully, you're not one of those. We do know that. Kathleen, before we leave, I do want to capture your thoughts on how would we possibly be able to maybe affect the balance in the budget of Illinois if we can, and maybe what can we do now looking at inflation over the next couple of years.
Well, Illinois has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And specifically when I was looking at the budget, to me this is no brainer. And I do budgets. I've been doing budgets for the last 20 years. But when I look at that, there's 7,000 units of government, and there's 850 school districts, each with their own administrative units and staffing. To me, there's a serious problem. And you look at our the number of the units of government in Illinois compared to other states of our size, and it's almost double. So I think that consolidation in certain cases would make sense. Certain school districts consolidation and local units of government. There's just a lot of wasteful spending that needs to be evaluated line by line. And I think, we're spending, but we should be fiscally responsible. And I think also the pensions, for example, is something that needs to be completely revamped and addressed. It's an ongoing problem. And so there's a lot of changes that need to be made. And I, frankly, coming from my corporate background, I cannot comprehend how some of these fundamental, simple budget fixes haven't ever been applied in the state. And that's why we need someone with a business mindset who can come in and look at it from a different perspective and, put politics aside and get our state fiscally balanced and healthy again.
Yeah, it's called corruption, and if you don't have these systems, you cannot launder money, I guess. So it's a reality, unfortunately. And we took what was existing in Illinois, and we basically superseded it over the entire country. And now, majority of people in the United States over the past couple of years now are recognizing what Chicago politics was all about. Kathleen, I know that for our viewers who are following you, if they do go to our QR code, it's going to take them directly to your website. I'm going to give you the last word. And what do you want from the individuals in the District 21 and from your voters that are out there still? You get the last message for them.
This is a very close race, and as you know, as I mentioned earlier, in 2018, this my incumbent won by less than 1,200 votes. So, I am asking if you're in the Lombard, Glen Ellen, Lisle, Naperville area, or know anyone in that area, to please spread the word and go out and vote. Most importantly, and voice your opinion. And if you could go to my website, potentially, donate I would be very grateful, because I'm still trying to get word out, and through digital messaging and some marketing efforts to help get me over that finish line. And my incumbent had $1.7 million from Mike Madigan, and and I unfortunately don't have that kind of funds for marketing campaigns. And so anything helps to get the word out. So just spreading the word and going out to vote, and a possible donation would be fantastic to help flip this district back.
No, like most people, Republicans running in Illinois, they never get any support or help. But I know that people are dying for a change. Like in my race, and I ran against a minority whip. Imagine being crazy enough to run against, the heart of where money gets moved by the machine. But we received 100,000 plus votes with 107,818 votes, with maybe even 50,000 being disputed here and there. So if it's $43,000, I could have gotten there. So most of it not even being direct donations, but what we call in-kind donations. It's possible to win in your area. I hope just get out and vote, folks. Money is not everything. In a state where dead people can vote, you can go out and vote. And frankly, if you don't vote, somebody's going to use your vote to vote for you anyway. So get out there, help Kathleen. It was wonderful talking to you. You've done a wonderful job with the kids, and you're a blessing and an asset to the United States. And hope that we see you in the Illinois Senate. With that also said, I do want to remind our listeners and voters that United Assyrian Appeal, our 501c3, again, this year we are raising money for the South Sudanese Christians and also the Assyrians in northern Iraq. It's not going to get any easier given what is happening globally, and this famine seems to possibly push as far as 2014 with the issues that are going to be affecting us, especially with those South Sudanese that are majority in the refugee camps in Kenya. And also, thanks very much to Sim Productions for allowing us the opportunity to be able to bring guests like Kathleen here on the show. Kathleen, it's a pleasure. I'm glad we had you here, and hopefully we hear good positive news on 8th of November.
Thank you so much for having me.
God bless. With that said, there's New Paradigms.